participants here. If it looks like we're a go here. Yeah, I think we are. Okay, so it is 1:30, our scheduled start time for this monthly meeting of the Integrated Waste Management Authority. We will begin with a roll call. That's
perfect.
Order. Let's go to roll call.
All right, Miss Arnold. Miss Arnold. We will say absent. Miss Bright.
I'm here.
Lynn Compton. I believe she was going to be phoning in.
We'll just make note in the record when she arrived.
I don't see her yet, Sasha.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Enns.
Yes.
Mr. Gibson.
Show
I'm here. I don't know if that registered.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gibson. Mr. Hammond.
Here.
Mr. Heller.
Here. Here.
Miss Marks.
Here.
Mr. Newton.
Here.
Miss Ortiglay. Mr. Pashong. Mr. Storton
Here.
and Mr. Burbeau.
here. I want to say a special thank you to Mr. Gibson for being in residence today. I don't know if that was intended to be the only county supervisor, but as you know, that's important. So thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure to help the cause.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Then we will proceed to the next order of business, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, which since I have the flag right next to me, I will lead. Please stand and join me in saluting our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Okay.
We will proceed to public comment for matters not on the agenda. So do we have anybody in the public wanting to make comment on something that's not on our published agenda?
Okay, so at this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. And I know we do have a couple call-ins and we are looking for one board of supervisors that was calling in. So if that's you, if you could please raise your hand. And I'm actually going to take the phone just in case. Okay, so caller ending in 1994, you may unmute yourself. To do that is *6.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just want you to know it's Supervisor Debbie Arnold and I'm on the phone. So I called in and just wasn't able to get out of attendee status to participant status. I don't know if you can correct that, but.
I will just leave you with the ability to talk. It doesn't look like I can promote you, but I'll just leave you with the ability to talk if that's okay.
Okay, and then you can just show that I'm participating in the meeting today. Thank you. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Debbie.
Okay, so
Any
our Derek Johnson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I just wanted to phone in today and say thank you to the board and the changes made to the joint powers agreement. We've been working as a city manager group with your interim executive director and are processing these interim changes to the JPA. We look forward to having a meeting with Ms. Toes and working on the HF and H study. We've provided comments on that study, and we look forward to working through some of the technical information and specifically some questions about budget and fee changes And we look forward to hopefully forming a working group to be able to work through these issues in great detail. We understand that this is of utmost importance to the IWMA, and we look forward to that effort moving forward. And then lastly, just want to reiterate on an ongoing basis that we look forward to whatever support, I think, at least speaking for the city of San Luis Obispo, and I know that my other city managers share this, that we have greatly appreciated the professional support of Ms. Toes throughout this transition period. And we look forward to, and we'll be following the item today as the board evaluates the next step in recruiting the executive director. So with that, Mr. Chair, that concludes my comments, and thank you for the opportunity to just briefly address the.
Thank you, Derek. And you kind of indicated you will be listening in when we discuss, let's get the item number, but item number 17. If you are here, I would like, I might possibly ask you a question when we get to item 17 if you are online.
Absolutely, happy to provide some input as requested.
Okay, all right, thank you. Do we have anybody else for public comment?
I do. Okay, Janine, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Barbara. Hi, this is Janine Rams calling in, and I'm happy to be participating from the community. An issue that I've been observing for the past 4 or 5 years is, and I sent a letter to all of you because I missed the deadline by 1 minute, I was told by the office. So they didn't put my letter to your agenda packet. But I'd like us to think about having a MRF, materials recovery facility. They have them in, they're working on having one in San Diego. They have a big one up in Berkeley. It's been going on for 20 years. I've been shopping at Goodwill, the warehouse, for 4 years because I've built up a pretty great inventory for my project Tableware Share, which is an event system to keep people from using throwaway plastics and single-use disposables. I was out there again today after a dental appointment. The Goodwill warehouse throws away thousands and thousands of pieces of usable housewares, small appliances, electronics, furniture, vacuum cleaners, things that have all been tested and gone through the Goodwills, and if they're not bought in a 3-week period, they're brought back to the warehouse. People have usually 2 hours to go through things, and they're picked up and thrown into these big roll-off dumpsters. Brand new puzzles, toys, and as I say in my letter, as the county has launched their holiday seasons giving project and urge all of us to bring new unwrapped gifts, I've gone to the Goodwill and I have a stack of at least 40 puzzles, some new brand new games. Target is the one that donates, and probably a huge write-off for them, to Goodwill. I purchased these things for 50 cents or to $1. And one of these days I'll hike down to the fire station and pick it up. I would like us to think as a county how to stop this massive throwing out of stuff that goes to our landfill. I know it happens because that's what the guys tell me. They don't recuperate it, glass from metal, because it all goes into the bin and nobody's going to reach in and cut their hands on broken glass. So I urge us to think about that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment, Janine. And as she noted, she did email a letter to all of us, so you can all read that as well. Okay, do we have any further public comment?
We have no one else for public comment.
All right, thank you. Then we're going to move on to our oral report from our interim executive director, Patty Taves, and I'm going to go shut the door here. So go ahead, Patty.
Thank you, President Barbeau. So first up, are there any questions from the board on the expense report, which is found on page 5 through 7 of your packet, or the credit card found on page 8? If there are, I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Okay, I'm not hearing any. And again, if after this meeting or any time in between this meeting and the next meeting, or any time if you have any questions on these type of items, please reach out to us here at the IWMA. We'll get the answers that you need and the supporting documentation. Next up, new employee. Yvonne Diaz is our new SB 1383 program analyst, replacing Cheryl Price. I wanted to introduce her to the full board and then let you know that she's already doing an amazing job. Yvonne, can you turn on your camera if you already don't have it on and say hello?
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Yeah, she's doing a great job for us, dived in and already made some significant changes and is helping us reformat and do some great work on the outreach that we're doing. So Yvonne, thank you very much. We appreciate having you here. Next up, local task force meeting update. On Monday, we had 4 members from Cal Recycle come in and help us in our meeting. In fact, 2 of them were chiefs, one in enforcement and one in education. So that was really helpful. And specifically, they talked to us about the SB 619. Who should apply, who shouldn't, answered a lot of questions on that. It was very helpful. I know everybody on that Zoom or involved in that Zoom meeting learned a lot. I did, and I live and breathe it. So did Kelly and the rest of our team here. Not only that, they dove into the nuances in the paper procurement for SB 1383, which are honestly frustrating and infuriating, but they help us work through a few of those things too. Some questions they couldn't answer. They still have to run it up through their legal flagpole, no problem, but they're going to get back to us on that. In addition, they're sending over a combination of what other cities and communities are doing, and this is a tough issue for our cities, on compost procurement, mulch, and energy procurement, hints and strategy from across the state. So that should be very helpful. The second we get this, we'll take and send it out and bringing everybody up to speed on what other people or other communities or cities excuse me, not special districts, but counties are doing as well, and solid waste authorities to meet this new mandate. After that, next up, Rob Hilton. I just wanted to give everybody a reminder, if you're a city manager or a special district, that meeting is on Tuesday, November 16th from 3 to 4. If for some reason you didn't get the invitation or it's not on your calendar, please reach out to me. We'll make sure that you get the invite. Please prepare in advance for this meeting if you're a city or a special district, because your comments, concerns, questions, issues, challenges, if you can boil those down into a written document in advance and get those over to Rob Hilton in advance, we can hit the ground running in this meeting and really make some good progress. And that's the end of my oral report.
Hey, thank you, Patty. Does anybody have any questions for Patty?
Charles, I had one quick question, please. This is Keith.
Sure, go ahead, Keith.
Patty, could you clarify the meeting with Rob Hilton? What is the specific content topic of that meeting?
So the specific content and topic is that draft report that Rob Hilton handed out to this board. The cities and special districts had some concerns with that document. They wanted to flesh it out more for, in some cases not, a Prop 218. So this meeting is really going to bring the cities and special districts together to get their issues, challenges, and concerns remedied, answered, boiled down, to hopefully get something that they can bring back to their cities, city councils, and work with moving forward.
Very good. Thank you, Patty.
You're welcome.
And if I could add to that, we, at our last meeting, we had just gotten it literally minutes before the, 30 minutes to an hour before the meeting. We asked you as board members to provide any input to Rob. We knew it would take longer for the cities and CSDs to provide input. And, I'd hope that, we would get that, and he could finalize it, but there was the depth of their concerns at the city level were pretty substantial. And so and we've asked, Rob and his folks to already be looking at those concerns, but, not to try to come up with a final version until we actually have this meeting next week. So that's a very important meeting for us to try to address those issues and challenges, and potentially see if there's a different methodology or something. But, Rob and his folks do have those initial concerns from the cities in particular, and are looking at those, so they can come to the meeting prepared to try to address those. Okay, Robert, you had your hand up first, and then Jan.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Patty, while you have the Cal Recycle people there, did you happen to ask about I believe there are some waivers for communities that are under a certain tonnage of material, and I know that Cayucas is about half of that minimum. And we would like to see if we could get a waiver. It's a matter of the reporting. So were we able to discuss that with them at all?
Actually, I've had one-on-ones with Oceano CSD and Cal Recycle, and unfortunately, the answer is going to be similar for Cayucas. Because of the 2014 reporting, the county reported as a whole, one entity, and so the tonnage isn't broken out. Moving forward, of course, we are breaking out the tonnage, so that problem will not be an issue in the future. I'm going to be working closely with Cayucas CSD and all the CSDs who are members, and try to see if there's still a workaround. Actually, we're working through the special districts to see if we can get a legislative fix, because as I understand it, it's fixed in law, it's written in the regulations. We cannot change it at this point. So we're looking at other options and avenues. We're not going to give up.
Okay, thank you. I know that those numbers are available, although they were reported in aggregate to the state, but we do have the numbers. Cayucas has its numbers. They were able to get them from Waste Connections. So I think we need to backtrack a little bit and see if we can get some documentation on that 2014 reporting.
And again, we're not giving up. We're going to be working through these issues with each special district.
Patty, can you clarify what you mean by what it is that's written in law? That
the waiver.
So for example, if you have, some of the special districts are interested in applying for a low population waiver, and we probably should go over this just really quickly. If you are applying for a low population waiver, typically you have to have a population density of 75 persons per census tract per mile. Now, I know that's not the case with Cayucas. It's the population waiver in that regard doesn't work, nor does it work for Oceano, nor does it work for like somebody like Napomo, right? But there's still concerned saying, look, our tonnage is under the total tonnage that's required, right? So let's work on looking at the tonnage, right? Because, SB 1383 is a big load for a special district. Let's see if we can have a workaround on that. Unfortunately, the regulations state that the tonnage that was reported in aggregate, in 2014 is the tonnage that is applicable here. Now, in 2014, the law hadn't even been signed by the governor. That was in 2016, so we had no idea that this was going to be even an issue. Now we know, of course, it is an issue. So we're raising that with the special districts and running it up the chain, and we'll try to get a legislative fix on it.
Yeah, because by definition, each of these CSDs has its own hauler agreement. So the amount of tonnage per district shouldn't be a hard number to obtain, even going back. Okay, thank you, Patty. Jan, you were next, followed by Karen.
Yes, so let me just do this. Yes, so I'm going back to the meeting that you were discussing with the CSDs and the cities and Rob. What I would hope that something that could come out of it is that there would be a single spot where all of the underlying data that people are seeking in order to justify rate increases under a 218 scenario, if all of that data and documents and whatever is required could be just put on, on the internet and Google Docs or whatever, so that everybody has got access to the same information. And so there's just to help streamline the process, because there are, as you know, there are all kinds of deadlines that are involved with the 218 process. And even if, beyond the 218, just in general for transparency, all of that data has got to be available. And so my question is whether that would be possible.
Patty, I see your next item, we have update for Rob. Were you just updating us on what Rob's up to? He's not online, is he?
That is correct. I was just updating you on what Rob's up to.
Okay, so he's not here to answer Jan's question. Can you answer Jan's question?
Well, I can take a look at it, see what we can do. I think it's a great idea. I think more transparency is better. I love the idea of streamlining processes. Let's see what we can do. Great suggestion.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Karen?
Thank you. I'm trying to, if you would please give me the date of that meeting again, please.
It was November, forgive me, 16th?
Yes.
Let me look, November 16th from 3 to 4 p.m.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And your city manager is aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they found a time where all city managers could attend, and not all, however many CSD general managers, but it was a matter of finding one where significant majority could attend. So, okay. Anybody else with questions? And Karen, I'm sorry, were you done, Karen?
I was, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody else with questions for Patty regarding her or a verbal update? Okay, all righty then. I believe, I did want to mention one thing regarding the local task force update. One of the things that the consultant has been working with the local task force on throughout this year is the development of ordinances that each jurisdiction could adopt, but so they wouldn't have to start from scratch, to help them develop an ordinance to implement 1383, because all of our jurisdictions need to either as minimum change their ordinances or adopt a whole new ordinance for implementing 1383. And I noted, as I was looking at agendas for another reason, that it seemed to me that Morro Bay actually brought their ordinance forward last night. Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct. Your charitable vote was approved last night.
Gotcha. Okay. So that effort, that the IWMA has helped him support through its consultant is, beginning to come to fruition. So, and I assume as part of your ordinance, you did delegate to the IWMA certain authorities to help accomplish 1383 requirements for your city.
Well, I don't know that we went into that level of detail, to be honest with you. It basically committed the city to SB 1383 and what the components of that legislation is. We didn't really talk about assignment of duties, who's going to do what, et cetera.
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. So with that, we will move on to our consent agenda, which is items 6 through 12. Does any member of the board wish to pull an item for discussion? Okay, nobody on the board wishes. Let's see if we have any public comment on items on the consent agenda.
At this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. I have no public comment for consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. I would note, one of the, or two of the items here is the calendar for the full board meetings and the executive committee. And, there is a date listed for each month in 2022. Maybe someday we'll get back to the good old days when we can meet every other month. But this body still has a lot of very significant issues before it. So I'm not sure if that'll occur, but I'll be more than happy to see us be able to go back to that when the time comes. So, okay, with that, I will take a motion regarding the consent agenda.
Chair Rabot, Hammond with the motion to approve items 6 through 12 on the consent agenda.
Okay,
This is Keith. I will second.
okay, we have a motion by Hammond, a second by Storton. Can you read the roll, please?
Miss Arnold,
Yeah.
Miss Bright,
Yes.
Mr. Enns,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Heller,
Yes,
Miss Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Newton,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Aye.
Mr. Burbo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. With that,
Just
we will
for the
move-
record, I wasn't called, but I do vote yes.
Okay, thank you, Keith, for clarifying
Thanks.
that. Okay, was anybody else not called? Okay. Okay, then let's go ahead and we will move on to item number 13 on our regular agenda.
Okay, so this is our annual audit for fiscal year 2021. So please turn to page 31 of your board packet. Barbara Asper-Nelson, our accountant, has worked hard with our auditor CLA to complete this audit on time. And today CLA has a couple of representatives here to answer any of your questions, as well as Barbara Asper-Nelson. So with that, does the board have any questions or comments or concerns?
I had a comment and it's sort of a question. And that is on page, let's see here. Page 7 of the audit, which is page 43 of our agenda. We state that our net position is $3.7 million, of which somewhat over 700,000 is in capital assets. So it refers to unrestricted net position of 2.9, almost $3 million. But then on page 11 of the audit report, page 47 of our agenda, it kind of breaks down that $2.9 million a bit more. And the point of that is $1 million of that we're required to set aside for as a closure reserve for our HHW sites. And then it was also deemed prudent, I believe, a long time ago to have $500,000 in emergency reserve in case anything ever happened to those sites or any of our other physical spaces that we do business out of. Point being, sometimes people say, well, the IWMA has millions of dollars in the bank. And I just want to make note of that to folks. And the question of the auditor is on the earlier page, why do we refer to it as an unrestricted net position when some of it actually is restricted?
Okay, so we do have Rich Gonzalez, principal, and Ricky Hegner on. Did either of you wish to take that?
Yeah, I could take that. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thanks for having us here today. So I'm a principal with CLA, and Ricky's our associate who leads the engagement. So to answer your question, so on the statement of net position, which is page
7, I think.
Yeah, thank you. So in the statement of net position, the purpose of the so basically we can only show restrictions on that statement. So the amount in question that's on the cash footnote, that's considered a reserve or more of an internal restriction that's set aside. For it to be restricted on the statement of net position, it would have to be restricted by an external party, such as a bank or a grantor. So our understanding was those reserves are more internal. They were established by the organization itself. So for that reason, we presented them separately in the cash note, but not in the statement of net position.
All right, thank you. If it is restricted though by the policy of a higher agency, us being a public agency, if it's, in other words, if the Department of Toxic Substance Control says you got to do this, then it's not our internal policy, and it's not our choice to set aside the money. Would that change that? I mean, it's, it's not by a bank or something, but.
Okay, right.
Supposed to do it, yeah. Okay, I bring that up though for everybody to see, we're not sitting on a pile of, on a pile of money as the initial position number might reflect. If you ever get that from somebody who says, hey, IWMA's got tons of money. That's really not the case. Okay, Karen, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you.
Oh, you're muted, Karen.
Okay. Thank you. I'm on a new device here, so please forgive me. I just clarifications, if I might. Did I read this correctly that there is no outstanding pension debt?
That is correct. We don't actually have a pension for retirement. We have a pension-like account. So any money that we put in towards employees' retirement is actually the employee's money. If something were to happen to that money, we do not have future debt with it.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then going through this report, I don't see that there were any findings. Is that correct as well?
That is correct. This is the second one in a row. We have had no findings.
Very good. All right, that concludes my questions. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And Karen, I'm glad you asked, because it's always a good reminder. I think a lot of people assume that because we're a public agency that our employees must be PERS covered, and they are not. We do make a substantial contribution, to a governmental version of a 401k type of thing. But there's no defined benefit plan that we as an agency are responsible for paying in the future. So, okay, John Hammond, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. A question to staff or maybe the consultant. Were there any accounting policies that were recommended to be changed, or anything that they found with regard to accounting?
Yeah, they did make a note in the audit that we do not have a reserve policy. That is something that we are working on with HF&H as we speak. Other than that, I didn't see anything in the report. Rick or Ricky, did you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, so during our audit, we did not have any findings to pre-report. 2 years ago, when we started the audit, we had several findings that were related to reconciliations, and we're happy to report that those are all cleared last year. Barbara and Patty have done an amazing job cleaning everything up. So we did not have any findings or exceptions this year.
Very good. Thank you, Barbara.
You're welcome.
And I think that's a key note, John, is that a few years ago, there were some recommendations, and they've all been adopted or dealt with.
Yeah, our agency's been under the microscope, and I want to make sure that we're crystal clear on what we're doing and that everything is substantiated, with regard to our policies that we're doing. So,
good question. Karen, your hand is still up. Is that just you didn't take it down, or do you have another question? Okay, Bruce, you have a question.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to emphasize both Karen and the response she got, and John just now touched on something really important. On page 16 of the audit report, which is page 52 of the consolidated agenda packet, there's the standard letter from the auditor that says they looked at the internal controls of the agency. They did not find any deficiencies, and sort of by definition, they thus did not find any material weaknesses. And those are two really important concepts that speak to how this agency has squared up its accounting to bring it to the standards where it should be. So I just wanted to make sure that that note, I was going to do that in comments after public comment, but since it was a topic, I think that's, let me re-emphasize something that Mr. Hammond brought forward on that. Congratulate everybody for the fine work of getting there.
All right, thank you, Bruce. And yes, thank you to Barbara for your work in bringing about this kind of audit result.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from board members? If not, we will proceed to see if there's any public comment on this item.
At this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment on item number 13, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. I have no public comment for this item.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll come back to the board. The recommendation is to discuss, receive, and file. So do we need a motion, or can we just, we've discussed it, we received it, can we just file it?
Yes, that would be fine.
Okay, so no need for a motion. Okay, with that, we will move on to item 14, a related item, which is annual audit request for proposal.
Yes,
Patty?
and while we love CLA and the work that they've done for us, we are required, as you guys know, to go out for RFP. Again, please turn to page 54 in an effort to institute our best practices and per our IWMA policy F9. I bring before you today an annual audit RFP with 2 separate recommendations. The first, please review and approve the documents for release. And then the second is to authorize staff to review, rank responses for the full board to select and actually award the contract. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Patty, could you advise how many entities responded to our RFP? Or wait, this is just the actual.
We haven't released it yet.
Yeah, this is just the actual RFP. Okay. Gotcha. How many responded last time? Do you recall?
If I remember, Barb, wasn't it like 3, 4?
I believe last time we received 3 responses.
Okay, thank you. Karen, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I'm becoming quite a pain, aren't I?
No, not at all.
I'm just wondering regarding if there are any restrictions regarding the firm that might be selected. For example, in my previous position with the school district, we had a policy that we would not contract with the same firm for more than 2 terms.
That is correct. It's the same here.
Oh.
Yes, it's the same here.
Very good. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. John, I guess you were next.
Thank you, Charles. Patty, I mean, how long have we, I think it was last year that we engaged this firm, and or was it 2 years ago?
It's actually been like 3 years now.
Okay.
Time flies when we're having fun, right? It's been I can't believe how fast the time has gone by. So it is time again. We do need to go out and for another RFP, as much as I really appreciate the work, the hard work that CLA and Barbara have done.
Yeah, I agree. Again, that it's always nice to have a different set of eyes, perspective wise. And I think it's important that we do that and keep that policy. So that's all I had, Charles.
Okay, thank you. Jan?
Yes, I just wondered what the time frame was. It's probably in the report somewhere, but if we approve this today, when would we expect to get the results back? What's the deadline for?
Planning on running the RFP for about a month, and then it's going to take us maybe a week to rank and vet. We are planning on bringing forth people in January, I believe.
Okay, alrighty. Yeah, and the other thing is, I'm sure that the new auditor will factor this in, but this audit ends with the fiscal year in June. And the constitution of our board that is going to change very soon, in that the county will be withdrawing. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of the audit, how, if that's something that you need to discuss sort of upfront with people when you're putting out the RFP.
It definitely will be discussed up front, and it's written into the RFP as well.
Oh, it is. Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. We'll be fully transparent on that. That's really important and a great point. Thank you, Jan.
Any further questions from board members? Okay, if not, let's go see if we have any public comment on this item.
Time if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. And we have a quiet group today. There is no public comment.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to the board, and the staff's recommendation is to approve the RFP, the request for proposal for audit services. Do we have a motion?
Charles, I'll go ahead and make a motion if you're ready to have staff review and rank the proposals as they come in, and also, of course, approve the RFP as submitted.
Okay.
I'll second it,
Okay.
Jan Marks.
Okay, Karen, I think Jan beat you to it there.
No problem.
So we have a motion by John Hammond, second by Jan Marks. Let's go ahead and call the roll.
And I do see that Mr. Pashong has joined.
Excellent. Welcome, John.
Thank
So
you.
we'll go ahead. Thank
Sorry I'm
you.
late.
We'll go ahead with the roll call. Mr. Hammond. Or
Aye.
Ms. Marks,
Yes.
Ms. Arnold,
I'm going to abstain just because we won't be participating in all this. So abstain for me.
thank you. Ms. Bright,
Yes.
Ms. Compton is absent. Mr. Enns,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Heller,
Yes.
Ms. Newton,
Yes.
Mr. Newton,
Yes.
and we have Ms. Ortiz-Leg as absent. Mr. Pashong,
Yes. No, I'll do an abstain, please. Abstention.
thank you. Thank you. Mr. Storton
Yes.
and Mr. Burbo.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, with that, we will move on to item 15, a discussion of the status and impact of the county's withdrawal from the IWMA. Patty? Or
Okay,
Jeff?
as you can see from the documents located on page 86 of your agenda packet, this agency received notice from the county of their notice of intent to withdraw on November 15th. Now, shortly thereafter, IWMA Legal, President Barbeau, and staff met with county legal and county staff to discuss how to best move forward and manage all these programs listed on page 85. As you can see, everything from hazardous waste all the way through to reporting to Cal Recycle needed to be discussed. Bottom line, the meeting was successful and we all walked away, I think, pleased, and that we're working towards developing a memorandum of understanding, outlining the duties and responsibilities and delegating everything. Mr. Minery, do you have anything more to add to this topic, or President Barbeau?
Sure. If it pleases the chair, directors of the board, I'll just follow up on Patty. I won't try not to repeat her. We did have a successful meeting with the county in regards to transition. I have been working with county council on a transitional MOU to provide for the IWMA to continue to provide services to the county in a transitionary state so that we can have seamless service to the residents and all residents within the county and accomplish the goals of both agencies to not disrupt the programs that are in existence. So I had discussions just today before this meeting with county council, and I believe we have a transitional MOU pretty much ironed out. The anticipation is to have that finalized, at least as to legal form, on Friday. It will go to the Board of Supervisors, I believe, on the next meeting, and then will come before your board as soon as possible. With that, I'll answer any questions or defer to President Barbeau.
Let me, it's kind of a question, but Jeff, based on our discussions, and you're working with them to develop the wording of the transitional MOU, and as you just said, the board of supervisors can do their thing on that fairly shortly. We will likely need to have a special meeting to approve that transitional MOU, correct? Because in theory, next Tuesday, the county, has to be providing these services. So while a few days may not matter, or a week or even 2 or something, but we should adopt the transitional MOU as soon as possible, so that everything's clear in terms of what we're continuing to do for the county and what they're, paying us to do for them. So,
Yes, I would anticipate a special meeting on that exact issue as soon as it's convenient for the board. But yes, soon.
Okay, all right. I think, boy, I've got 5 hands raised, and I think John Hammond was first, and I think Keith was second. So let's start with John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Jeff, has there been any discussion with regard to the county asking for funds that were deposited into IWMA agency to be returned to the county agency? This is definitely in particular to our agency's interests as well. So have there been any discussions about that?
We have had no substantive discussions on that at this point.
Okay.
I would imagine that's probably most appropriately handled after the 15th of this month.
Okay, thank you.
John, as you might have alluded to, it was mentioned in the county's letter, but in talking with Jeff, we determined it would be best to address that after the county actually is no longer a member.
Understood.
Okay. I think Keith was next, and after that, I'm not sure, but I'm just going to go down my list. So Keith, followed by Robert.
Thank you. That was one of my questions about the request that was listed in the letter of the over $1 million of reimbursement, but I guess that will be discussed at a later time. My second question was for the transitional MOU, is that an approval of just this board, or is that have to go back to our individual cities to ratify?
That would be something that would be approved by just this board.
Okay, thank you.
Robert?
Okay. First of all, yes, the question about the county's request for $1 million. Our audit, I think in there, you just said the expenses are exceeding revenues, and $1 million out of there is going to be significant. And I would think that would be the elephant in the room, so to speak, if you're having a meeting with the county. Frankly, I'd start there. The other question I had was they've asked for reimbursement for 25.5%. That's where they came up with this number. And my question was, so the 25.5%, what's included in there? Are the special districts that are members included in that? Because, for example, Cayucas is in the county. We are a township. And I think there needs to be some understanding of what's the 25.5%. And right now, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Robert, and that's why I wouldn't put too much stock in the $1 million request. To me, it's almost pro forma, a pro forma request, not something I wouldn't. We'll just wait till after November 15th to formally respond to that. But in answer to your question, the 25.5% came straight out of the MSW report that the county commissioned, and that 25.5% represented the share of county population that resided in the non-IWMA represented areas. In other words, the really rural areas plus Los Osos. So the implied 74.5% of the rest of the county's population reside in the cities and the CSDs that have garbage authority and are represented on this board by you. And to follow that, I think we've made the point before that while 25.5% of the population may reside in those areas, they represent a much smaller proportion of tonnage of garbage tipped at landfills, and much smaller percentage of garbage bills, and that's because the vast majority of commercial activity and commercial accounts, large accounts and large generators reside in the cities and the larger CSDs. So, Jan, and then Karen, you had your hand up, but I don't see your hand up anymore. So we'll go to Jan.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to point out that that Rob Hilton's, you came up with a totally different number on that. I think as I recall, it was closer to 10% rather than
Correct.
25%. So I think there's, we need to be, to even talk about it later, we need to have actual facts and data. And I also want to point out that we're talking about accounts, not people. You could have a family with 10 kids and it would be one account. So I think that's what we need to look at if we're looking at this question at all. Now, my concern about the MOA, and it's a question and a concern, is will the IWMA receive reimbursement for the services rendered, and how will that be calculated? Because I don't want to be in a situation where the remaining jurisdictions are basically being burdened by carrying out these different services, but they're not being reimbursed by the county.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, but that's one that I know I certainly brought up in the meeting with the county, and they understood that obviously if IWMA continues to provide a service for a period of time until the county is ready to assume that service, the county would have to pay a proportional cost of that service, as well as a certain amount of overhead that, wouldn't be the intent of the IWMA to try to nickel and dime them with overhead. But obviously, if IWMA staff goes through the process of awarding and maintaining these contracts to operate HHW site, to pick up and properly dispose of all of that household hazardous waste, to coordinate and run like the take back programs at the stores for light bulbs and batteries, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we can't just charge them the proportional cost of their share of that. We have to charge them some admin overhead for the IWMA staff time to administer their program, because otherwise, yeah, exactly to your point, the remaining jurisdictions would be subsidizing the county, and so their desire to have us continue to provide these services on a transitional basis, it's not their expectation to freeload.
President Barbeau, if I
No, that wasn't my question. My question was, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. My question is that included in the MOA, or is that, I mean, you kept saying obviously, well, it's obvious to me too, but my question is whether that kind of term is included in the MOA at present, the draft.
Thank you, President Barbeau, directors. The transitional MOU will account for certain level of administrative costs and allocation of costs that is fair and equitable allocation for the programs that the IWMA is running, and there will be an accounting of all these costs, over a portion of overhead costs, a portion of fixed costs, all of that is counted in an administrative allocation. So it will all be accounted for in a fair and transparent manner. And the draft MOU currently does address exactly that.
Thank you. Okay, I'm glad to know it's not just a policy thing, it's actually operating in terms of the whole financial thing. So thank you.
Yes, all of that has been nailed down pretty well.
Perfect, thanks.
Great question, Jen. Robert, you see your hand back up, but Karen, did you get your question answered and that's why your hand disappeared? I'm gonna
Yes,
assume,
thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Was answered.
Okay, back to Robert and then Keith.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. One is, Jeff, you just referred to the MOU. I've only seen in our documents an MOA. Are we talking about two different documents here?
I was referring to a transitional MOU with the county to continue providing for the IWMA to provide services in this transitionary period contemplated through June of 2022.
Okay, that's fine. And then the MOA is the one that we would be agreeing with the cities and special districts. And I'm assuming we will discuss that, Charles, is that right? When we get to the next item, the MOA?
Yes.
Okay, I'll hold my comments till then. Thank you.
Thanks. Keith?
Actually, thank you, Jeff. You answered my question. I was curious how long we expected the MOU to last, but you said June of 22.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other board questions? All right, let's see if we have public comment on this item.
Okay, at this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. I have nobody for public comment.
All right, thank you. Bring it back to the board. Jeff, I see in the recommendation, it says receive and file the letter of withdrawal. So, I mean, obviously the letter has been received from the county. That we don't need to take an action, right? I mean, we all know it's there, it's formal. It takes its own effect on November 15th. Right?
There's no action required on behalf of your board.
Gotcha. Okay, and any other direction needed by staff or council relative to this issue?
I don't need any direction at this time.
Okay, all right then. Okay, then we will go ahead and move on to item 16. We discuss our ad hoc committee to address the JPA modifications. And on this, hold on a second here. I've got to make sure I have the right stack of papers in front of me. On this item, I'm going to start by backing up a little bit to kind of Robert's question. You know, at our previous meeting, we had adopted the immediate JPA amendments needed to conduct business without the county as a member. So that amendment was sent forward to the jurisdictions, reflecting the county pulling out, reflecting the city of SLO, at least in the interim, acting as the, I forget the technical term, executive agent or whatever it is. And then we also withdrew or removed the supermajority provision, which required 8 votes because we would only have 8 members of the board. And we didn't want to have a requirement to have unanimous votes. So those amendments were designed to allow us to continue to function. And I'd asked Sasha on Friday as our clerk where we were at on receiving those ratifications from the cities. I know we did it last night in Atascadero. And I believe everybody's accounted for except Morro Bay in terms of doing, I think City of SLO is going to do it next Tuesday, which is a day late, but not $1 short. So I think Morro Bay is the one we don't have a definitive date on, at least not a date we'd like. And so that's important. Then the MOA that went with that to include those changes relative to the participating CSDs. Since they're not actual members, I think them meeting the November 15th timeframe is less critical. And Jeff, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. But anyway, that's where we're at on that. And then now we're going to talk about the subsequent amendments to the JPA. Jeff, did you have a comment regarding Morro Bay?
I do not.
Thank you, sorry. Wrong Jeff.
That's all right.
I'm sorry, 2 Jeffs. Jeff Heller.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Morro Bay received the document you're referring to on Monday, and it's a very short notice for us to get it agendized, but we are moving forward, and you'll probably have it by the end of the week.
Okay, that would be great. I don't know if you're going to have a special meeting because I mean it should have gone out, and I believe it did to everybody at the same time. Maybe
we received it on Monday. We received it 2 days ago.
Interesting. Okay, all righty. And but your folks are working on agendizing it in some form so that we can get it.
We'll get it to you shortly.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay, so we're ready to discuss then. As part of that discussion we had last month, we adopted those amendments, sent them out. We said, you know, those are needed immediately. We need to have a subsequent discussion, appoint a committee to address other changes that have been expressed as desired by some of the jurisdictions and or potential other issues folks might bring up. A key one of those Most of the cities have included it in their resolutions where they stated they intended to stay in the IWMA. One of their common things was requesting that we adopt a provision that limit the IWMA to only adopting ordinances that reflect state mandates. So that's definitely an item of discussion. We talked about appointing a committee, and then in the executive committee we talked about that further. And I kind of found myself originally kind of overcomplicating the issue. And I was thinking we can have up to 4 IWMA board members on that committee, because that's less than a majority of the new number. And I was thinking, well, we need at least 1 city manager, we need somebody on a local task force, but if we have a city manager, it probably shouldn't be one from whichever IWMA board members cities they're representing. So at the recommendation of the rest of the executive committee, they said, Charles, you're the president of the board, just appoint a committee. And so I'm here to offer this up. And what I would like to do is to appoint a committee of 4 board members, and I'll tell you who that is in a moment. And I'll tell you right now, I'm looking at, John Hammond raised his hand last month that he would like to serve on this committee. I think I would like to see John and John's viewpoint represented on the committee. Robert Enns had volunteered to be on the committee because he's the representative of the CSDs, and so I think that's a very important viewpoint to be represented. Jan had offered to be on the committee, but I, for whatever reason, decided that I'd rather do that, take that on. I know Jan would do a great job, but I decided I want to be part of the process. And then I've asked Keith Storton to, if he's willing to sit on the committee, so we have kind of a little more geographical balance and have somebody from the South County on the committee. So we talk about the board or the committee membership. What I've decided is that it makes more sense to me to, as far as formal committee members, just have the 4 IWMA board members that I named. And then we would have a meeting fairly soon, but we would invite as many city managers who want to participate, as many general managers, the CSDs, and or as many members of the local task force. That is the staff members that Patty deals with on 1383 implementation, who each in their own way has gained a substantial expertise about what we do over the last year. And so what I'd like to do is appoint the committee, and I'd like to send out a letter by the end of this week to the city managers, the general managers, the LTF members, and say, hey, when we've received these ideas already so far, or issues, I should say, so far, as a result of these city resolutions, but we'd like to get any other ideas so that we can come to a meeting, already have a list of issues to address. Would give us time to have our council look at them as well. He would be present at the meeting. And so we give everybody like a week to submit ideas. We'd schedule a meeting, and we'd have a meeting, and we'd go over all of the ideas, see what we could agree on, probably look at then pursuing some specific language, and then have maybe one more meeting to finalize it. So we have a set of recommendations to bring back to the full board as amendments to the JPA. Robert, I see your hand raised, but I also see Jeff Minery, and I always want to defer to council first to stay out of trouble. So Jeff?
No trouble at all. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context that the JPA does provide that the president of the board shall appoint ad hoc committees. So President Barbeau is following the JPA terms and conditions in this regard. However, the JPA also says that his selection of the ad hoc committee would be subject to ratification of the board. So as you're listening to the president of the board speak on this issue, keep in mind that we will be seeking ratification of his selection at the end.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Robert, followed by Jan.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. And I'll be happy to make a motion when everybody's had a chance to talk. I have several questions that have come up on this MOA, which I assume is just the transitional document that gets us from where we are to the JPA. Is that right?
Jeff?
Did I handle? No, they will happen in tandem. The transitional MOU is just to continue services with the cooperation with the county from now through June.
I've got that, Jeff.
Your board will be working. Sorry.
I'm asking about the MOA, not the MOU.
Oh, the MOA, the provisions of the MOA and the role and involvement of the special districts will be part and parcel of the discussion regarding JPA amendments.
Okay, because I've heard several comments here this afternoon. One earlier was that the MOA involves the IWMA only. And I think somebody said there's no need to go to be approved by the cities. I think the MOA is the agreement between the IWMA and the cities and the special districts is going to get us to the JPA. Is that correct?
I think I might have lost you a little bit there. The amendment to the JPA, the discussions of the ad hoc committee will be focused on amending the JPA and looking at the role of special districts. It doesn't have anything to do with transition with the county.
No.
Am I missing the point?
Yeah, he was not asking about the transition with the county. He's referring to the MOA regarding the CSD representation that also went out to the cities for ratification and to the districts, to reflect the departure of the county.
Right, and all that amendment to the MOA does is acknowledge and accept the revisions to the JPA.
Okay, then I'd like to speak to that. First of all, Cayuga Sanitary District received an email from IWMA on October 20th. It says First Amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement. It then on the signature page, or just that on the now therefore, it refers to the JPA, and I'm confused about how you have it. You have a document called the Second Amendment to the, or the First Amendment to the MOA, and you're asking to sign the Second Amendment to the JPA is what it's asking you to sign. I don't know if that was a mistake or I'm not understanding the process.
I can clarify that. The First Amendment to the JPA was the memorandum of agreement with bringing in the special districts. So the JPA has a First Amendment, which is the MOA.
Okay.
So it is the Second Amendment to the JPA, First Amendment to the MOA.
Okay, my next question then.
Too many acronyms.
Yeah, I'm confused there. There in the Second Amendment to the Joint Powers Agreement, I think is which brought in the special districts. There were 5 now therefores listed. And on our current packet, we only have 4 of those 5. And what was eliminated was section 5.3. And it refers to the California Government Code, section 6509. And it's the one that talks about having to have one member from one of the agencies present at the meeting. And Jan Marks has stepped up and volunteered to have the city of San Luis do that. And I'm curious whether that is a requirement by California Government Code or what exactly is that? We read that section 6509 of the California Government Code, and my legal expertise tells me I can't even understand what it's saying.
So I can explain it real quickly. The that provision in the government code requires when you have a joint powers agreement with multiple agencies that you select one agency that will essentially be the procedural guide and a limitation of powers for the rest. So that to the extent you have procedural differences in the way different local agencies operate, you have one that you turn to for the guiding principles in that regard.
Okay, so in this case, as I think we've decided, we accepted San Luis Obispo, or will accept Jan Mark's offer. And what that means then is that Jan Marks has to be at the meeting, or a representative from San Luis Obispo has to be at the meeting, or we can't have a meeting. Is that correct?
No, that is not correct. All this, that is just a designated agency regarding to procedures and limitations of powers in the exercise of power by the IWMA. Ms. Mark's role as a board member is equal to all others.
Okay, thank you. And then is that section 5.3 to be included in the JPA or not? Because it's not in our packet for today.
The revision to that paragraph was added. Correct me if I'm wrong, President Barbeau will probably recall, we made that revision on the spot, and it wasn't in the initial package that your board looked at, but was made at the October meeting.
Okay, I'm just pointing out that on page 129 of our packet today, that section 5.3 is not in there.
It isn't. That change was included and referenced in the documents that were sent to all member agencies.
Okay, thank you. Then I have one other contribution here, if you want to call it. I want to put this out there. Cayuga Sanitary District has communicated with Oceano and I believe some other cities. And they have a list of 9 items that they'd like to see. It's a response to the MOA, and I believe we've returned this to the IWMA. But for the sake of what we're talking about here, I'd like to read them. They're very brief, and I think several of them are already in writing here, so I'll be as brief as I can. We're obviously removing the county, and we're asking that the IW meeting requirements be a representative of the majority of the board, and there's no minimum attendance by any agency, and I think you just explained that. We want to remove the super vote, which I think has been done, but I'm not sure. We like to limit the authority of the IWMA to state mandates, and I believe that's in writing somewhere. There was some talk about requiring a minimum of 6 months for an agency to withdraw from the IWMA, and I think we've learned that 1 month doesn't quite get it done. I think in the MOA, we need to spell out the recruitment of an executive officer, which I believe is the next item on our agenda. And there was some discussion about obtaining a solid waste consultant to review the IWMA staffing and fees. And I think that came up about the 218s that were required by some of the cities. And then number 8 was finalize the rate study. And number 9 is initiate reporting procedures that will include the tonnage of each agency. And I believe Patty said they were going to be doing that. So we'd like to see those in the MOA and then as they transfer into the JPA. So thank you for the time, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, Jan, you have your hand up. Jan?
I just would like to, I basically support this idea very much. I'm happy not to be on the ad hoc committee because I have so much to do, but you know, I think it's wonderful that Charles will be on it. I do think that we've left a group out that needs to be consulted, and that is the other 4 of us. So when you look at item 2 under necessary steps on page 90, the ad hoc committee members solicit feedback from the 7 city managers and 11 special districts and local task force members and like that. What I would like to have us think about would be if the 4 board members who are not on the ad hoc committee have ideas about changes to the JPA, if we could direct those to Jeff Minery and have our names removed, from these ideas or little edits or whatever, and then also just have that included for consideration as the ad hoc committee tries to put together the new JPA. Would that be okay? I mean, I just want to put that in there so that when we deliberate, we can consider that idea too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jan. And I think you are others as deemed appropriate in that sentence there. But absolutely, I want to ensure that every board member be able to provide input.
Right. Rather than getting a almost finished document and then trying to add things in at the back end, more or less, if we could be part of the mix from the beginning, I think that would be helpful and also make things more efficient.
Charles, John Hammond, that's exactly what I was going to mention as well. I thought the same idea as Jan. I'd love to have all input come to Jeff and then into that ad hoc commission then to discuss overall for every idea we have.
And President Barbeau, if I might comment, in discussions with President Barbeau, my intent would be to do a quick revision red line to the current JPA, incorporating suggestions and making notations as provided by Mr. Enns today and your various cities in your resolutions and through comments that I hear in the board meetings, so that when the ad hoc committee starts, they have a running start with all the changes that have already been expressed by the parties that are involved here.
Okay. Robert, you have your hand up again or still? I'm not sure.
Oh, sorry, forgot to put it down. Thank you, Charles.
Okay, got it. Okay, we have any other questions from the board? From board members? Okay. Then let's see if we have any public comment and we'll come back and wrap up that discussion.
At this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button down at the bottom of your screen, or if you're on the phone, you may press *9. And it looks like I do have some hands up. And one looks like it went down again, but I'll see if it comes back. All right, so Derek Johnson, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you. And Mr. Chairman, just want a point of clarification. We do have the MOA scheduled for the City Council. Currently, that's scheduled for the 7th of December, but it shouldn't interfere with the IWMA's activities because my understanding is your next meeting is until the 8th. We've just been trying to sort through with IWMA staff the versions of the MOA and finally arrived at clarification. And so we've agendized that at the soonest available meeting.
I'm glad you spoke up, Derek. Concerns because I thought when I corresponded with Jan and then with Jeff in Morro Bay, I thought that you guys were going to do this next Tuesday on the 16th. The reason it's of potential significance to us is between now and our regularly scheduled December meeting, we may need to have a special meeting, in particular regarding approval of the transitional MOU with the county. And or I don't, at this point, maybe it wouldn't happen, but we had in mind we might have to have a special meeting regarding the rate resolution. And there was possibly even another subject that we might have needed to have a special meeting of the IWMA board. So I'm no lawyer, but I do have a concern about us meeting before we have final ratifications.
I think there's
JPA.
I think there's some confusion. On the 16th, I believe we have the ratification of these initial amendments to the JPA. Is that correct, Eric? on the 16th?
We do not. And so if it's important for the IWMA, I can, between this and the next item, I can circle back with our staff. Unfortunately, there's been quite a bit of confusion, unfortunately, between versions, et cetera, not a lot of clarity about expectations. So we will work and see what we can do to amend our agenda and add this to the 16th if it's imperative for the IWMA to have the city approve the MOA as soon as possible.
Yes, and I made that clear in an email, and I got a response back saying that it would be on the consent agenda on the 16th. So I think that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and make that happen.
Thank you, Derek. I'm glad you spoke up, and thank you, Jan, for that. Okay, so any other public comment on this item?
Yes, we have a couple more. Okay, Janine, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, did I hear correctly that Robert N. suggested that this board will not entertain anything other than state mandates? So that means that this board will not endorse or will not promote the polystyrene ordinance? Is that what I understand?
Well, are you done, Janine?
No, well, I just want to express, if that is the case, I am shocked and I'm disgusted and disappointed, and I don't know where you have, if that's the case, now I'm assuming here that you haven't, passed that by all of us that have worked so hard to get this issue promoted and passed to stop this, horrible polystyrene from floating out into the ocean and the rivers and streams and creeks. For within our own jurisdictions, especially that 5 of our cities have the ordinance. And I would think that the Atascadero and Paso Robles would happily join along because this stuff is so horrible. So yeah, I'd like clarification on that before I make too many assumptions.
Well, I can't answer that definitively. I can tell you that all of the city's resolutions have contained a desire to have this clause in the JPA to say that at least in the future going forward, that the IWMA would not adopt any ordinance that went beyond those mandated by the state. But I can't answer your question relative, and it's not our normal practice to answer specific questions from members of the public. So I'll leave that there. Jan, you have your hand raised, and Jeff, I don't know if you'd have commentary on that. So Jan?
Charles, can we?
I would just like to say that my understanding is that we will not be combing through every ordinance and every regulation that the IWMA has made since 1997 and try to undo them. So I think my understanding, and I would like to hear from Jeff Minery, is that when we amend the JPA, it would be a new ballgame going forward into the future. It would not be retroactive. It would not be going back and saying, oh, well, too bad we banned single-use plastic bags, which we did before the state did. There's a lot of things that were cutting edge that the IWMA did in the past that the state later followed up.
Right.
So that would be my intent, would be that the JPA would not say that it's retroactive. This is a brand new ballgame. We're going to be going forward with the urban jurisdictions without the county. So I'd like a comment from Mr. Minery about that.
There'd be nothing inherent about the past in adopting that change for the future. Robert, and then Jeff.
Did Jeff want to speak first?
Sure. President Barbeau and directors, at this point, you do have a polystyrene ordinance on the books. So that will have to be addressed as part of the discussions on the JPA amendments. And also there's nuances to this state mandates only as well, where does state mandates apply only to ordinances, which would be my current assumption at least. However, you do have programs, education programs, et cetera, that are not necessarily state mandated. So these are the types of issues that would be discussed at the committee level and then brought back to your board for final approval. But I am aware of those distinctions. Thank you.
Robert?
Okay, I just want to comment, the intent of that state mandates only was not to, as Jan says, make things retroactive, go back and remove ordinances. We had that discussion in depth at the time we did the ordinance. There was a lot of discussion about state mandates only even at that time. And I think we all agreed to, by vote, to keep the ordinance, the polystyrene ordinance, and that's not the intent of that statement that would go in the new JPA would be from this point going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
No, I agree. I agree. And I just want to say that, you know, there are questions in terms of our resources, our time, our staff kind of bandwidth about implementation and what, you know, how we would roll that out of the polystyrene ordinance. But that is all administrative. I really would be, I think it would be a real mistake to in any way make anything retroactive at this point with the JPA. However, I think it does need to be discussed by the ad hoc committee. And I also want to mention it's in our 5-year strategic plan that also was enacted after we approved the polystyrene ordinance. You know, and I have to agree with Janine Rance, it's a great ordinance. So.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I just wanted to, along the lines with Jeff said, kind of state that there's nothing inherent about, this kind of provision we're talking about requiring a review. Somebody might bring it up. I would much prefer we discuss it, in the ad hoc committee, if at all. So. Okay. Any further public comment from members of the public?
I have no other hands raised.
With that, I'm going to bring it back to the full board, and I want to first just see, does anybody have any objection to the committee as I outlined it? Robert, you have your hand raised again?
I'd be prepared to make a motion if no one has objections.
Okay, and as part of this, yes, we will ask everybody on the board for their input.
And if I might, I believe the motion should at least include a ratification of President Barbeau's selection of the ad hoc committee.
I've got it. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, Charles, I'll move to approve the establishment of a JPA subcommittee as appointed by Board President Charles Barbeau.
Jeff Heller, second.
Okay, is that okay in substance, Jeff?
Right. That's right. That's great. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we have a motion by Robert Enns, a second by Jeff Heller. Let's read the roll.
Mr. Enns,
Yes.
Mr. Heller,
Yes.
Miss Arnold. Miss Arnold, are you still present?
It looks like she dropped out.
All right.
Are you on a webinar thing?
Is that Miss Arnold speaking?
No, that was a microphone from Gibson.
Miss Bright?
Yes.
Mr. Gibson?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Aye.
Miss Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Newton? Mr. Newton, are you still with us? Not up here. Mr. Newton is still with us. Mr. Pashong? Mr. Pashong, are you still with us? Mr. Storton
Yes.
and Mr. Burbo?
Yes.
Motion passes 8 yes, 0 no, 0 abstained.
Okay, I thought Mr. Pashon abstained.
I don't believe Mr. Pashang is still with us.
Okay.
Mr.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gibson, for staying with us. Okay, alrighty, then we will move on to item 17, recruitment of executive director.
Okay, yes, if you turn to page 159 in your agenda packet, you'll find the background information associated with this topic. So staff today recommends that the board review and approve the updated executive director job description found on 161, page 161. In addition, based on the executive committee and/or President Barbeau's recommendations, staff reached out to several 5 organizations specializing in governmental recruitments. And as you can see on page 1, I think it's 159, 3 of the 5 were non-responsive. A couple of them were just completely booked, absolutely would not take on another client. Ralph Anderson really was, we still labeled him as non-responsive because they failed to give us a proposal, as well as they wanted an additional cost of living of $75,000 on top of it. There were 2 proposals who did turn in, Avery and Associates and Bob Murray, as you can see from your agenda packet. Both of them they're not too far apart in pricing. Bob Murray and Associates, roughly, it's going to take about 4 months to go through the process, a little bit shorter for Avery and Associates, about 3.5 months. And again, Avery and Associates is slightly less expensive. So I'd like to answer any questions that you may have on this or get any feedback.
Okay, do we have any questions from board members?
Yes, please. Karen Bright.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Karen.
I couldn't find my raise hand button.
Yeah.
Sorry. So you're saying that you had 2 responses, one from Avery and Associates?
That's correct, and one from Bob Murray.
I see here that it was non-responsive. Am I reading this wrong?
No, it was Ralph Anderson.
Well, I'm looking at on page 159, shows Avery and Associates at the top, and then it says non-responsive at the right.
You're absolutely correct, because we did an agenda or an addendum to the agenda. Absolutely correct. I'm sorry, Karen, to throw that at you. We did an addendum to the agenda afterwards. After we posted the original agenda, they sent it in, if I'm not mistaken, the next day, their proposal. And so we did an addendum to the agenda so that we reposted it again, and they did submit a proposal.
Okay, so then I missed, was that then in a separate email? I missed that somewhere along the line?
Correct, in a separate email.
Okay, I missed that then. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Thank you. I'm sorry.
I apologize, Karen. Sometimes it pays to procrastinate in reading your agendas. Because you make sure you get the latest version that way. So if there was a change. I'm not sure who was in which order, so I'm just going from the top of my screen. Keith.
Thank you, Charles. Patty, in regards to the executive director's job description, is that just the same one we used for Brooks? Was anything, no. Okay, so
no.
Who has reviewed it and updated it?
So I actually drafted this and brought it before the executive committee. They did ask me to add in a few more changes and additions, and then to bring it before this board for your approval.
Patty, can you describe in any, I mean, it was based on the position description that was there for Brooks though, correct?
Not necessarily, no. To be honest with you, radically changed. And what changed is we wanted to focus on the IWMA moving forward is not so centric on the IWMA, but more supportive of the member agencies. We think this is really important, whether you're a city or a special district. This new executive director needs to be able to reach out and connect, not only with the cities and the special districts, but with members of the community as well. Communication here is big. We need to bring everybody forward with SB 1383. 1383, as well as any new legislation coming down the road. And so the position has actually changed a great deal, even though, and yes, we did remove the county board of supervisors. It's again, a lot more nuanced, a lot more, we asked for somebody who really has experience with solid waste issues. Not that it's mandatory. Again, these were suggestions. We're looking for people who have been in the industry, who really can wrap their head quickly around what we need in this position and get up to speed fast.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome. Great question.
Jan.
Yes, I went over it in pretty great detail, and the big addition that I asked for that has shown up here is under knowledge, skills, and abilities to add outstanding communication skills and abilities to establish and maintain professional and effective working relationships with other member agencies, etc., and the general public. And I do feel that that's something that that's, you know, my perception of, in terms of Brooke Stayer's communication skills. As far as a new board member, like he never reached out to me, and I was unable to establish any kind of relationship with him. So I think that it's something that we really need. I put that in there. Yeah, so I wanted to also just add that my experience with Avery has been very good in the past. Now it is kind of old news. I've been off city council between 2016 and 2020. But prior to that time, the city of San Luis Obispo has used the Avery company and gotten very good results. So I just want to throw that out there. Thank you.
Jan. John Hammond.
Thank you, Chairman Barbeau. The question I have for Patty was that we've used Bill Avery a lot, actually, and most recently with our city manager, police chief currently. And one thing I really liked about Bill's firm is that they have a provision, at least they had for Paso, that if we, for some reason, don't work out between our new executive director, that he will then go out within a year to find another one for us for the same price. Is that in the contract at all, or anything proposed?
Yes. Yeah, there is a provision to that.
Yep, that's making it even nicer that we have a fallback position if things just don't work out with Avery and Associates. So I would certainly recommend them. I think they're very professional. I've used them for the last 14 years, 15 years here. So that's all I had to put in there, Charles. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As a comment that, you know, one of the things that's been common in the resolutions from the cities is asking us to pursue as soon as possible the permanent, you know, the recruitment of a permanent new executive director. So, you know, this is, you know, trying to answer that mail, but we do note that the process will take 3.5 to 4 months. You know, so I don't know if we do want to readdress the issue of potentially an interim executive director. I'm looking at, you know, we have numerous very significant issues that this agency is working on. Hopefully our immediate JPA amendment is coming to fruition here, but we have our JPA amendment committee to work through. We've got 1383 implementation. We've got to come to resolution on our rate increase. We've got this recruitment itself, and we have a transitional MOU with the county. And, you know, those are a lot of things as in addition to the day-to-day things that this organization has always done that right now, you know, are all on Patty's plate. And so I think it's, you know, really critical that we move forward with this issue itself. And I don't know if we would want to address trying to get Patty some help in the short term as well. If there's no other questions, I'm going to go to public comment, and I was hoping that Derek Johnson was still on the line. I was actually going to ask him, although I would note, I'm glad to hear that both John Hammond and Jan Marks have some prior direct experience with one of these folks who responded to the RFP. I've heard of these names, but I've not had a direct experience with working one. So I'm glad that we have two board members who have some direct experience with one of the proposers. So let's go to, right now, we'll go to public comment before we bring it back for discussion. Do we have any public comment?
At this time, if a member of the public wishes to make a comment, you may press the raise hand button found at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on the phone, you may press star 9. I have nobody for public comment.
Okay, so we may have lost Derek. So I'm actually, extra grateful then that we have a couple of board members who've had some experience with one of these firms. Bring it back.
Apologies. Sorry, President Verbo, Derek Johnson just raised his hand.
Okay, so Derek is online. Okay, so let's go to Derek.
Okay, Derek, you're able to unmute.
Yeah, Charles, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and appreciate the opportunity to address the board on this. And we certainly share, I think, speaking for the city of SLO, as part of our resolution, the enthusiasm to pursue an executive director. We know in this time of transition, with a lot of the mandates coming through and the transition, that the staff needs as much support as possible. And so encouraged to hear the chair talk about and perhaps an interim approach to making sure that staff feel supported. There is a lot on their plate and a lot happening, and this is all complicated. With respect to the recruitment firms, I think both of them are clearly qualified. We recently went through as a city an RFP process, selected some different firms, and happy to work with the chair or the board members. As you all know, the Great Resignation is something that is affecting our job market, and we've had to be very selective and purposeful about how we're marketing our region and getting professionals to take the leap into the Central Coast. We offer a lot of great things about San Luis Obispo County, and yet there are challenges, and happy to work and talk to anyone about what we've learned through the recent recruitments that we've launched.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Do we have any other public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, then we'll bring it back for discussion. Jan, you have your hand raised. And actually, John Hammond had his hand raised first, I think. So, John.
Oh, I'm sorry, Charles. I forgot to pull it down, but I'm ready to make a motion whenever somebody would like.
Okay, well, let me see what Jan and Robert have to say first. Jan?
Okay. Yeah, what I just wanted to say is I think you were referring to an acting. We have an interim executive director, and Patty's doing a great job. But you were referring to an acting executive director rather than an interim. Isn't that correct?
Well, I believe that Patty's the acting interim director. So no, I was referring to an interim director.
Oh, I think, Patty, what's your title?
As I understand it, oh God, I am the interim executive director.
Right, and so that's my understanding too. So I think what the question is whether we would also want to appoint an acting executive director, and I'm not sure if we can actually do something like that under this agenda item.
I don't think we would do that today because we don't have anybody to appoint.
Right, but the okay, so you're just interested in kind of getting feedback about that idea from the board members.
Correct.
And then it would appear on another agenda. Is that correct?
Correct. Or, when last time we did this, the executive committee kind of looked, had some suggestions and made a recommendation to the full board. But I think what we should probably do is vote on this matter, the recruitment of a permanent full-time executive director, and then if Jeff will allow it, get some feedback on an acting or an interim, whatever you call it. If that makes sense to you, Jim.
Yes, and I would like to move the staff recommendation or second it.
Well, I don't think the staff recommendation did not specify which firm, so your motion would need to
Oh,
include.
with Avery.
Okay, thank you.
Hammond will second that.
Okay, and Robert, so let's discuss that if necessary. Robert, do you have a comment or question?
No, well, I just had a question about being more specific in the job description about knowledge and implementation of 1383, but I'm comfortable with the motion.
Okay, so any further discussion of the immediate motion, which is to engage the services of Avery and Associates in the search for a permanent executive director?
Charles, discussion real quick. What Bill has done with our board up here is that he's asked the individuals what we want to see in an individual. In other words, he does reach out to the board for input. And that's one of the attributes I think is really good about Avery. He wants to have our input before he gets out there and starts looking for somebody. So I think we'll see that.
Okay, good point. Right, and so I think I'll just put all the board members on notice. You know, we engage Avery, they will be in contact either with each board member individually or in small groups or something. I'm not sure how they do that, but expect contact. So, okay, any further comment, discussion on the motion? Okay, so we have a motion by Jan Marks and a second by John Hammond. Let's call the roll.
Ms. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Hammond,
Aye.
Ms. Bright,
Yes.
Mr. Enns,
Yes.
Mr. Gibson,
Yes.
Mr. Heller.
Yes.
I don't believe Mr. Newton's back, but Mr. Newton, are you with us? And Mr. Pashong, I believe, is still not with us either. Mr. Storton
Yes.
and Mr. Burbo.
Yes.
Motion passes 8 yes, 0 no, and 0 abstain.
Okay, all right, and so before we permanently leave that agenda item, do we have any discussion on whether or not we should also pursue an interim or acting executive director over the next 3.5 to 4 months? You know, pursue it more sooner than that to help provide some additional coverage over the next 3.5, 4 months takes to find an permanent executive director. Robert.
Well, I would actually defer to Patty on that. One is that, you know, she's still the program director as well as the interim director. And I think that, as Derek Johnson said, this is a lot of stuff is on the table right now. It might be in our best interest if we could find someone or a firm that could come in and assist Patty in keeping this thing on track. So those are my comments.
Any other comments? Jan?
Yes. There is a firm that specializes in interim or acting or short-term placements of public agency staff, high-level staff. And one of the people we were talking, one of the persons we were talking with about assuming that role earlier has now gotten another assignment through this agency, which is how I know about the agency. So I'm in favor of at least exploring it and seeing if we could be very specific. It would be a part-time type of arrangement, very specific as to the tasks, so that our present staff is feeling supported and somewhat relieved from the burden of trying to do 2 jobs at once. I've done it. I'll tell you, it's hell. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you, Jan. Jeff Heller?
Yes, Director Marks, I support your comments. This is a very challenging time for the organization for obvious reasons. I think if we could find someone to support Patty on an interim basis, that would be excellent. Because of the Great Resignation, who knows how long it will take for us to get the permanent executive director. 4 months might be optimistic, and I don't think we want to rush that process because of the load that Patty is carrying. So I support that idea.
Okay. Keith?
I'd just add that I support my colleagues' comments. I think it is important that we get somebody in to assist Patty. I've been able to reach out to Patty a few times and she's been very responsive and helpful, but I know there is so much going on, and I like the idea of perhaps picking some selected items, whether it's some of our agreements that we're working on or more technical items that frees Patty up to tend to other parts of our business, and just kind of dial in on some of those important things to keep us moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Robert, you had your hand up again?
I don't think we can make a motion on this or make a decision, but I'd like to see it on our next agenda, or to give staff some direction to look for somebody to do this. And maybe Jan can help staff and get that headed in the right direction for us. Maybe we can make a decision at the next meeting.
I think also we could task the executive committee to look at this and bring forward any ideas along the lines what Jan talked about, or if any local names come to mind or anything.
So let me just ask a question. I think, in the past, unfortunately it didn't turn out, but the executive committee did identify someone to be an acting director, and did not bring it to the full board. So just in the interest of time, I'm wondering if the full board would feel comfortable with us putting this on the next agenda committee meeting and authorizing us to just continue to try to identify the person. And of course, then it would come back to the full board, like, is this candidate okay with you? So otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to
I
lose
agree.
a lot of time, and there's some urgency involved.
I understand, Jen, and to be clear, I mean, last time the executive committee had, immediately after Brooks' departure, had a couple of special meetings, one to identify potential interim folks and another to interview and then recommend, because the executive committee certainly didn't hire Mr. Ogren without full board approval.
Right.
The executive committee did bring forward a recommendation to hire Mr. Ogren. And we look at that essentially in the same manner that the executive committee be, go about seeing what it can find, see what it can do, and then bring something back to the full board.
That's just perfect. That's what I was trying to say. Yes.
Keith?
Just real quick, I do have complete faith in the executive committee, but perhaps at that level, you can identify some of those more specific duties that might be appropriate for the new person to handle.
I agree, because I don't think, you want a certain skill set coming in to help alleviate burden on Patty and not just become another, not just a add burden to Patty. The whole idea is to provide relief by doing some of that executive level interagency communication and those sort of things. So, okay, so no motion here, but
Charles, I want to just
go
say,
ahead, Robert.
I just want to point out to everyone that I can't talk to you outside of a meeting. I can't talk to Jan outside of a meeting. So if we need a special executive meeting just to address this, I'm available.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
I think we will need
Me
to
too.
be-
I'll be flexible as long as it's not a Tuesday. My Tuesdays are terrible, but
Thank you, Jan.
No, it would need to be a special meeting. So.
yes.
Time. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So we are ready to move on to item number 18, certificates of appreciation.
Okay.
And as noted in the report, this, and as you all know, this is the last meeting in which the county is a participant in the IWMA. And as such, we wanted to recognize the service provided by our 5 county supervisors. Thank them, although I believe that Mr. Gibson might be the only one still present online, which earns you the most valuable player for today's meeting, Chris. Because you didn't have to say a word and you're the most valuable player.
I was going to say, I will measure my comments very carefully at this juncture, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the sentiment coming forward from the remaining members of this board. I'm not at all convinced that as a body, the Board of Supervisors deserves any amount of appreciation for the consequences of actions taken. But let me just tell you that I'm hopeful for this agency going forward. I've listened carefully to folks of a lot of goodwill who care about getting the job done for residents of this county. I will note that the vast majority of my constituents remain within the IWMA at this point. The actual number who will be under the management of county forces is relatively small. So I care very much for your success and wish you the best at it. And in my normal role representing the 2nd District, I'd be happy to continue my conversations with each and every one of you as you take on the challenges ahead of you.
Thank you, Bruce. We do have a certificate of appreciation that we will be sending you and each of your colleagues, regardless of how the impetus and the thought processes behind the county's departure. All 5 of the supervisors have been actively engaged in the work of the IWMA over the years. And 4 of the supervisors, Dawn is fairly new, the 4 of them have probably served longer in the IWMA than any of the rest of us except John Hammond. And so we do thank them for their active participation over the years. And we will be forwarding this on to you. I don't know if anybody else would like to add any comments before we call it a day. Any comments on this issue? Patty?
I would, Charles. I just wanted to say thank you, especially to Bruce Gibson. You've been here since 2007, and I know our meetings are sometimes long and they're challenging at times, but you've always been there. You've always been supportive, and we greatly appreciate that. And we look forward to working with the county in the future.
Thank you, Patty.
Right, Jen.
Yes, I also, I just want to say that the despite the events of the last few months, that all of the supervisors have brought a special perspective, a countywide perspective to our deliberations. And I may not have agreed with them, but I do respect their leadership, and especially Supervisor Gibson. Since 2007, I think I'm trying to think. Yeah, I was on the IWMA in 2008, 2010, and so beyond your keen enthusiasm for protecting the environment, I really appreciate your scientific expertise and analytical ability, and your being so articulate. It really helped guide the organization along. And so I'm hoping that in some way you'll still keep us on track as a kind of a steward or a guardian in the background. So thank you.
Thank you.
Keith,
I'd just like to say a quick thank you as well to the county and all of our supervisors that have served, but it's also a thank you to the history of the many supervisors that served this organization in the past that created a legacy for us to continue and move forward. I'm disappointed with the outcome, but recognize that sometimes those outcomes perhaps may lead us to better things, and I'm confident about us moving together forward, and we will still partner with the county in many ways because we have to and need to. And the politics change over time, and we'll just all be here to watch that evolution take place. Thank you.
okay. Thank you, Keith. Any other comments? If not, we will proceed on to our final item, which I believe is just simply whether or not we have any future agenda items under which we listed the possibility of meeting a special board meeting, which I think I mentioned the reasons why that might occur. So we don't have anything specific in terms of date and time to talk about a special board meeting, but did indicate to you a couple of topics that might lead to the need for a special board meeting. Jeff or Patty, do you have any comments regarding future agenda items?
I have no comments. Thank you.
I don't either. Thank you.
Okay, all righty. Anybody else have anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, all right then. Thank you, everybody. I believe we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Charles. Good job, Charles.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Goodbye. Yeah. Okie dokie.